Hey everyone, Rabanzo here. In this episode, I speak with singer-songwriter Tom Meny. We talk about the types of rejection musicians deal with, writer's block, email list building tips, a couple of his upcoming engagements, and his forthcoming podcast for singer-songwriters, and a lot more. Here we go. This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. I'm your host, Rabanzo. This podcast features conversations with me and indie music artists. Conversations intended to help other indie musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. In the forthcoming podcast, Singer-Songwriter with Tom Meny, a reboot of a prior podcast creation, Tom will feature discussion and interviews on his musician journey experiences, good and bad, including rejection, festivals, recording, touring, house shows, and more. It's coming sometime in July of this year, 2019. I have a little news I'd like to share with you. As friends of the podcast have encouraged me to do, I've created an Unstarving Musician Patreon page. This is a place for the Unstarving Musician community and its supporters to get a little extra, a little behind the scenes of the podcast, like my icebreaker conversations with guests, the theme tunes, a little bonus content, a little extra insight and access to me as a musician, author, and creator. A little extra input into the direction of the podcast, the Unstarving Musician community, and the forthcoming second edition of the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs. A little extra goodness I've not even dreamt up yet. Things you can have a voice in creating. So now there are two ways you can support this podcast. You can become a patron. Just go to unstarvingmusician.com or to the show notes for this episode and click the little button that says Become a Patron. Or you can join the Unstarving Musician community at unstarvingmusician.com. You can just sign up right there on the homepage. In this case, you'll get tips and insights from me and my amazing musician friends via an occasional email. Signing up for the Unstarving Musician community, totally free. Becoming a patron, a mere $3 a month. No long-term commitments, no spam, just unstarving musician love. Tom Meny, back to Tom. Tom was featured back in Unstarving Musician episode 54. Just search for that episode number 54 or Tom Meny. He spells it the traditional way, T-O-M. Meny is M-E-N-Y. At, you know where, unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. Okay, here's my conversation with Tom Meny. Thank you so much for joining me again after the major fail last week.
It's my pleasure. I mean, you know, I think I rambled a bunch anyway, so.
Yeah, we're going to try and be more succinct this time, aren't we?
Yeah.
Both of us. I on my to-do list now is to document the fallback procedure so that I'm not scrambling like I was. And the funny thing is I've used that method to record before one other time, and it was a scramble, but I got it done. And for whatever reason, I just didn't do it right last time.
Well, I know you had a bunch of stuff was going on around the internet and all that being down, so you know that's understandable.
It does tend to hinder the process. So well, by the way, so it's only been a week since we spoke, and today is June 14th, but has anything exciting happened since last Friday?
To be honest, you know, I have been just doing a lot of work. I've got a show tonight that I'm excited about out in Dripping Springs, which is about 40 minutes from where I live in Buda, which is south of Boston.
You know, I always thought it was pronounced Buda. Is it actually pronounced Buda?
Yeah, Buda. And
wow, after all these years, I didn't know.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest with you. I lived here most of my life. I didn't know how it was pronounced really until I moved here. I lived in South Austin, which is Buda is immediately south of Boston. It's the first town when you leave the city limits of Austin.
Is it spelled B-U-D-D-A?
It's just B-U-D-A.
Yeah, I remember it. I mean, I think I've known of the town most of my adult life, you know, growing up in Dallas-Fort Worth, and clearly I'm not a an Austin native or anything remotely resembling, since I didn't know how to pronounce it. But thanks for admitting that you didn't either for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, even living in South Austin, right next to it, I always thought it was Buda as well. But Buda, and then I never put two and two together. Buda isn't spelled that way. So,
That's right.
It's a tiny town, but we are growing pretty. It's actually one of these articles, Texas Magazine or Texas Monthly, was saying that it's one of the fastest growing cities in the U.S. But it's a nice little quiet town right now. We're getting some good restaurants finally, but I like it. It's cheaper to live here. It's quieter. There's no traffic in this town. But once you try to get into Austin, that's when you get in trouble.
So wait, you live in Buda?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Maybe you told me this once before and I'm forgetting it all, but, well, dang it, I want to go there because I feel like Austin to a degree has been ruined. I know it's still a lovely place and I intend to go back and spend time there, but it's just like everybody from Silicon Valley and everywhere else in the country are moving to Austin.
I'm real careful when I say anything bad about Austin, but I will tell you that it is hot. It is super congested. The traffic and we're now one of the top traffic cities in the country, according to some. You never know about these polls, who's taking the poll, but there was something that I read this week about we're moved up to like number 13 in the country or something like that. But it is awful, super, super, super congested, pretty much all day.
You know what? When Robert Plant decides to spend time there as often as he can, and Tim Ferriss moves there, the whole place is gone.
Right.
It's still a beautiful place, but I know, man. That stuff is it's kind of depressing. Oh, hey, so yeah. I don't know if you looked at notes that I shared with you from our last conversation that wasn't even recorded, but I wanted to start with the podcast a little bit. You had some time ago started a singer-songwriter podcast, which you're rebooting, and you're kind of, rebooting, I guess is a good word, because you're going to do it just a little bit differently. Can you talk a little bit about it for listeners?
Yeah, I had a podcast that was kind of aimed towards singer-songwriters that are maybe just starting out or kind of not really at the professional level or full-time musicians. But and I wanted to just kind of chronicle, I guess, some of my experiences. And again, I haven't been doing this forever, but it's been about 10 years now that I've been playing out live, and I've had some really cool things happen. And I've also had the experiences that a lot of other singer-songwriters have with, you have to deal with constant rejection, whether it be from radio stations playing your stuff or from not getting into certain venues or not getting into certain festivals. So I just wanted to talk about those things and also, maybe share some advice on things that I've learned over the years with recording, producing CDs, playing house shows, trying to book shows, touring, things like that. And as we talked about before, I must have had 17 or 18 episodes on the previous version of this, which was called, at the time, it was Tom Meny's The Singer-Songwriter Podcast. And the reboot is going to be just called Singer-Songwriter with Tom Meny.
I love it.
And so I've recorded the pilot, which I'm just calling it the pilot, which is a shorter episode, mainly to get up onto iTunes. And because, as you know, they require at least one RSS feed, and to make sure that my artwork is approved. But then it's going to be a consistent weekly show, and sometimes it'll be me, and sometimes it'll be me with a guest or two. And so I'm pretty excited about it.
Cool. Have you published that yet? I'm assuming not.
No, I have not published it yet. I am looking for, here, I have a funny story real quick. I'm sure, or you may or may not know of Artlist.
No.
Are you aware of Artlist? Okay, Artlist is a website that you can pay a fee and have unlimited music from all different kinds of genres, all different kinds of artists, and you can pick instrumentals that are piano or instrumentals that, or, things that just have kind of ambient music for podcasts and videos that are royalty, or you get a license basically. So, I went to this thing and it was like $16.88 a month or something. I was like, hey, I can do that for sure. Like, and then if I don't like it, I can cancel in a month or two. And so yesterday I joined and hit, pay or whatever. It went to my PayPal. I put in all my info. And at the second that I hit the button and it processed, I saw that it said billed annually. So I paid $200, and I couldn't get a refund, so I was thinking I was going to be paying $16 or $17. And so I'm super invested at this point. Not necessarily disappointed because I'm listening to some of these soundtracks and, they're very, very cool. I'll probably use some Chris Taylor music, and we talked about that before, and you've had Chris on the podcast. I may use him for the outro music to my podcast, but there's some really, really cool things on here that I'm thinking make for a good intro.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm also...
I was going to say, why are you not creating your own?
Yeah, I actually had a really cool clip that I'm going to use. So I'm kind of copying from all my favorite podcasts as far as format goes. And there's one called 500 by Midnight, which that's a quote from Swingers, the movie, but that's a Las Vegas podcast, and I'm very much in love with Las Vegas, so I listen to that. But they have a cool format of how he introduces each episode. And so I'm going to have a little clip, which is me playing live, and then that'll fade down, and then I'll say, the date and the name of the podcast, and then boom, it's going to go into some intro music. And I had a really cool clip, but I feel like that first live bit works. Then the intro, and then a cool, produced intro track. And I thought about just doing it myself, but there's me in it. The little clip at the front will be me.
Yeah, cool. And I do think, by the way, it's an awesome idea that you. I'm sorry. I think it's an awesome idea that you may use Chris Taylor's music for an outro. His music is just great.
I just love that guy. I mean, I saw, that was another thing I was going to bring up about when you asked if I'd done anything cool in the last week. Last night I saw Chris Taylor live. And for a portion of the show, he played with a band, which I have not seen him play with a band in the 4 or 5 years that I've known him, until last night. And it was really good. And I also saw a guy named James Jean, and just a great show, great combo. Chris opened, and they used the same guys as far as their band. And, so cool. That was great. But Chris has some songs that'll really lift your spirits or make you feel emotional. And I have a perfect song for the outro that Chris did, and I first heard him do it at the Dripping Spring Songwriters Festival. And it was the last song of the festival and probably the coolest thing I ever saw at the festival, and I've done it for 5 years. So I've gotten his permission to use any of his songs.
No, that's so cool. Hey, before I forget, I wanted to offer a quick tip on when you do your first publishing, and that is to publish 3 to 4 episodes simultaneously. It helps and this is predominantly for iTunes. It helps with visibility. Oh, yeah.
Good advice, and I'll take that.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks. I'm looking forward to it. So, all right. So I'll be looking for that. When do you think you're going to hit now that I threw a wrench in, when do you think when do you think you're going to hit the publish button for that first?
Well, I mean, if I'm doing 3 or 4 episodes, that's going to change things, but I'm not necessarily in a rush to get them out. I want to do them as professionally as possible, even though, so I'm using this device that the Rode microphone company sent me, and it's the very first podcast studio, all-in-one podcast studio. So that is the big reason why I decided to start the podcast up again. Before, I was very inconsistent. I had, like I said, 16 or 17 episodes. I deleted them all, did another 4 episodes that, were maybe 4 months in between, sometimes an episode, and nobody will ever subscribe to something like that. Or they may subscribe and then they realize, hey, I'm not going to hear this again for 4 or 5 months, and then they'll delete to get you out of their queue. So this podcast device, when I saw it marketed the first time, it really excited me. I mean, it has everything that I want. And the reason that it was so hard for me to do them consistently was because I'm not really great at using editing software. I know my way around. I can record a demo of me singing and playing the guitar, but I'm not really great at editing. It takes me a tremendous amount of time. And so this device allows you to really just record your whole show. It has these soundbite buttons where you can hit a button and it plays the intro, or hit a button, it plays the outro, hit a button, it might play a song that you've loaded. So it makes it very, very easy to just record. And then when you stop recording, you take out the memory card, put it in your machine, your computer, and upload the file to your host. So just immediately I wanted to redo and start this thing over. Plus it has the ability to, you have 4 inputs, so I can interview 3 people or have 3 other people in the room. And it has a channel for connecting Bluetooth to your phone. So like you and I are talking now, over the phone, this thing has its own channel for a phone connection. So
very cool.
That's very, very, very exciting for me. But I want to do it as professionally as possible. So I listen to podcasts every day, and I kind of take note of little bits and pieces of things, like maybe Conan O'Brien does on his podcast, or some of the other comedy podcasts that I listen to, just right. Maybe the way they do their some of them have advertisements in the middle, and they'll have like music playing before hitting an advertisement. I have one advertisement that I have to do for every episode. So I'm stealing from everybody, and I'm sure that's kind of the way. Well, that's the way the world works, and really all good ideas. You take inspiration from things that you've picked up. Yeah. And when you put them all together, it's something totally new. So I have no problem with that. I
had a friend a long time ago said that originality is concealing one's resource or one's sources. A quote that he took from somewhere, but to speak to the same note. I look forward to seeing more info about that Rode gear. There's something to be said for making that easy, because I've taken the road of minimal editing, but I still do some, but the conversations are by and large unedited, to the chagrin of some listeners, perhaps. And maybe the whole thing, I know some people, like I have one friend who listens to the, podcasts that are of the caliber of NPR, and I don't think he's not a musician, but I don't think he can stand to listen to something like my podcast, because it doesn't have 20 people working on it to give it that same quality.
Some of those things are, almost basically a radio show, a radio morning show, where they've got a producer and they've got 3 people in the studio with mics, and I love all different, I like that stuff. Like Conan's is kind of like that, where there's 3 of them, 2 producers and him and a guest. So 4 people talking. And then I like Bill Burr, who it's just him. There's no intro music or any kind of intro. It's just hey, it's Tuesday, blah, 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 and this is the Monday morning podcast. And then he just rambles incoherently for an hour. So I enjoy all different versions of them, but I'm still in the, I'm very, very close to putting stuff out, but I'm not in a super rush, but I would say that there will be something within 3 weeks.
Cool. That's pretty soon. I'm going to promote the piss out of it, if I may use that language on my own podcast. So be sure to keep me posted.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said earlier related to topics that you talk about. And one of them is constant rejection. Can you talk a little bit about one of your standout types of rejection and how you've learned to deal?
Well, I'll tell you, there's so much of it. I mean, it's like, if you follow the stories of maybe actors, if you watch their interviews on TV or maybe over a podcast, you know that, actors might go on a couple auditions a week or a few auditions a week if they're lucky. And multiply that by 4 weeks and they may not get anything and ever, which is why they're, they have to work at restaurants. That's kind of what they do in LA, I guess. So I can't even imagine that much rejection, but in music, you're being rejected from when you submit to play festivals or when you try to book certain venues, and there's a lot of reasons why why you would be rejected. So, there's nothing wrong with feeling bad about it. That's your natural emotion or your natural reaction is, why don't they like me, or what's wrong with me that,
Yeah.
Why are some of my peers being able to play this venue and I can't get in? Or why did some of my peers get into this festival and I can't get in? And that's kind of like how they were talking about, Instagram and how it's affecting society because all you're seeing is the very best pictures of somebody's life and they're made up, they're photoshopped and airbrushed or whatever. And so you think that person's living just a fabulous life, but and even at some extent people might think that from seeing my social media, because I get a lot of comments, wow, it seems like you're just playing and playing and playing, and that's not the truth. What they're seeing is me upload a cool picture of a show that I played, but that might be one Saturday out of the month, and they just assume that that's what my everyday is, and that's not the case. But so you can't. You have to understand when you're getting rejection that it is okay to grieve about it, I guess, or feel bad about it for a while. But and there's no. I don't think. There's no way to get past that, but just know that other people are also experiencing that. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't feel bad. It just means feel bad and know that other people are experiencing that and that eventually you get something great, So if you're submitting to a bunch of festivals or maybe songwriting competitions, things like that I have done a bunch of, and I've had a lot more rejection than acceptance. Just know that keep doing it. And one day you'll get in to a festival or one day you'll get invited to some sort of competition. And that's the way it works. So,
well, that words of wisdom. And I guess another thing is just remembering, and you said this in a roundabout way, but remembering it's not about you or it's not about us all the time, and seldom is. It's more about what's happening with whatever, the person, the festival, the venue.
Oh yeah. And I'll say this, and I think Adam Carolla is where I kind of picked this up, and that's another podcast that I listen to. And it's really cool because I was a huge Adam Carolla fan, and politically, he and I are on opposite sides of things, but there are some things that he repeatedly talks about, and one of them is kind of like work ethic, and some people will tell you that if you just need to take the leap. If you want to do this, you just need to take the leap and become a full-time musician. And Adam Carolla is completely has the opposite philosophy, and so do I. I think you need to be able to pay your bills and then work your butt off at night doing your music until you have so much work doing music that you can get out of that day job. But anyway, I forgot even where my point was going, but I think that's a good point, at least to make on its own.
Yeah. We were talking about remembering that it's not. We were on the rejection thing. I'd commented, remember that rejection's not always about us, and it sort of helps lift the badness.
One of the things he was talking about is that when you get rejected, one of the things that you do is try to justify it in your head, but you also have so much self-doubt. Why don't they like me, or what is it about me? And sometimes you'll kind of go back at them and say, hey, how come this person can get in and I can't get in? But the fact of the matter is, for whatever reason, you were not right or not what they were looking for. And it does not matter what you say or do. It's not going to change that. So you can try again later if it's something that comes around, yearly, if it's a festival or something like that. But again, I would never say don't cry over spilled milk or whatever, because you have to, and that's the natural thing that happens whenever you are rejected. It always sucks and stings. Sometimes it stings for a little bit longer than other times, and it's okay. Just know that it's okay. And eventually, just like in a relationship or a breakup, and everybody's been through it, eventually you get past it. But when it's happening, you think you're going to die. But
right, time does heal. Time does heal.
So, it is just a part of anything showbiz related. Any.
Yeah. I'm kind of reminded of this kind of advice for sales, and that is oftentimes no just means no right now, but not necessarily later. So remembering that can help too. Right. And that sort of puts it in perspective. I have to ask you about something else. Let's shift gears again, because we talked about this a little bit last time, and I think listeners would appreciate hearing your story. But you confessed to being in a bit of a writer's slump, I think were the words you used. And I know it's only been a week, but we talked a little bit, and I shared the words of Shannon Curtis last time we spoke on writing. But how is that going? And can you share again? That particular chapter?
Yeah, I was a part of. Not only was I a part of these songwriter groups, I actually started a relatively large songwriter group a couple years ago. Ray Prim, my good buddy, and you've had him on the show, he was a part of Bob Schneider's song group. Bob Schneider is a very big name in Austin and all over the country, really. He's been in multiple bands, but the most important thing relating to this story is that 15 or 20 years ago, he and a singer-songwriter named Casey Crowley started this group where they were just hanging out, them and a few other musician friends, and they decided to write a song a week, and they would meet in person, and then they would have a prompt, like a word or a phrase, and they'd say the prompt, and then a week later they'd all meet up again and sing the song that they wrote that contained that word or phrase or idea. So that became a very it was a mythical thing, because nobody actually saw it in person. Nobody, because it was only a very small group of people. And then as time went on, Bob would talk about it in interviews, and Casey Crowley would talk about it in interviews. And then people started copying that format, and now everyone does it all over the world. And Ray got into Bob's group, and I met Ray, a few years after that. And then I wanted to get in Bob's group, but I was not able to get into Bob's group. Bob didn't know me. I was not a name in this town. And so Ray said, well, let's just start our own group, which we did. Ray called it Songwriters. And then we would just email our songs in. But then one day I got the idea of, let's make a Facebook group. And I made a big Facebook group called Songwriters University. I invited all the musicians I knew. And I think in year 2, we started out with 89 people. And if you can imagine, wow, 89 people writing a song with your prompt, I would pick prompts out randomly, or I would go to the internet and look up titles of poetry, or look in poetry and just pull out just a random word or 2 words. And that was really cool because, you start getting people where you go to shows in town, and it's someone that and someone that happened to be in your song group, and then their hit song has your prompt in it that you created, and so anyway, that I was doing that for years, just being in these song groups, writing a song a week. And then I stopped just because I was so busy with playing shows and working as well. And I felt like I just needed to take a little break and kind of hone the songs that I have written and perfect them. And then next thing you know, time passes and I just cannot write a song. And even being in the song groups, I would get kicked out of my own group because that's they call it the song game, really. And that's the game aspect of it is if you don't write a song in that week and turn it in by midnight on Sunday night, you're out and you have to wait until the next session. So I would get kicked out of my own group just constantly. And someone else would have to take over the creating the prompts. And that's really kind of a normal thing, actually. But so it's been quite some time since I've written a keeper, a quote-unquote keeper. I've written, a handful of songs that I thought were great, and I'd play them at a show or two, and they just would lose their luster. So it's been a while, and we talked about that, a week ago. But just as a matter of fact, when about 20 minutes before you called, I was sitting on the couch in my office and kind of came up with what I think is a pretty cool idea that I'm going to try and dive deeper into. And that's a funny thing that happens to me is this couch in my office is not, I don't normally play my guitar there, even though one of my guitars is hanging up on the wall right next to it. I usually take my guitar into my bedroom and sit on the corner of the bed or the chair in there to play or to maybe, sing a few songs to get them back into my head before a show. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when I am in a different place, that sparks something. I'll never forget, like, basically when I first started kind of playing out in this town, one of the first songs that I wrote was because I was waiting for somebody that was late. I was kind of going back to learn a little bit of guitar theory from my guitar teacher when I was a kid. We ran into each other as adults, and he was still teaching guitar, and I said, hey, man, let's meet a few times. I'll pay you, for the hour. And let's go over theory, because I never learned theory when I was young, because I just didn't, as much as he would want to teach it to me, I just kept, no, I want to learn the stuff I want to learn, which is tablature and the cool songs that I knew. Anyway, I started seeing him again. One day he was late to our lesson. I was just sitting on the bench outside the courtyard in this building where the guitar lessons were. and I wrote a song called Over You, and that was pretty much the beginning of my songwriting and the beginning of me, this whole thing really, was that song Over You. So it seems like when I'm in an unfamiliar place and I have my guitar and I just start fiddling around, things oftentimes spark up.
You are listening to my conversation with singer-songwriter Tom Meny, and now you're going to hear a clip from a song called Hours, Hours, from his Love and Pay album, available wherever you find your favorite music. Let's give it a listen.
To be done for the world staying still, and I miss the sun. It's an outdoor thrill. Who's taking all the credit for the time that's spilled? Go back and get it. It's left unfulfilled. It seems like there's not enough hours in the day to do the things I love.
What did you think about, or did you think about at all, our conversation regarding what Shannon Curtis says with making those appointments? And in her case, they're, I think, about 3 hours long with herself weekly. And I remember that you were particularly interested in a comment she made about spending the first hour trying to clear all the obstacles out of her head until productivity began.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is, since we had this conversation, we had a lot of conversation over a bunch of topics a week ago, and what happens is I forget that you and I talked about it, but the people that are listening to this don't know what we're talking about. So I feel like I'm kind of maybe not filling in all the blanks, but yeah, I mean, I'm taking that to heart. That is, I haven't practiced it yet, I guess is a good way to say it, but I have went to the Cyndi Lauper video that you sent me, and I basically she's saying, and this is a common thread from a lot of experienced songwriters that have been around a long time. And basically, you're going to write 100 songs, and you may write 100 songs, and 4 of them might be great. And so you need to write another 100 to get another 4. And that's the way it works. And by doing that, it's like going to the gym for your that part of the brain that creates songs.
Yeah.
You're exercising the brain. But if you can keep in your head that the idea that the song you're writing, even in the middle of it, might start to suck to you, and you should just finish it. And I don't always practice what I preach, but I do know that works. I do know that it works. And I don't always practice what I preach. And I don't know what it is psychologically that causes a block, but I know that now I think a little differently than I did maybe 4 years ago, as far as the process of songwriting and the process and about the music industry. But there are certain things that are keeping me from continually just finishing songs that I know that are bad. And maybe it's an ego thing, like people expect something out of you, and the reality is people don't expect anything from you. They're living their lives. But something about the creative, our creative mind, we have a little bit of an ego, and that's just inherent with people that want to share their art with others. So it's okay. But something is causing a block, and something is keeping me from doing the things that I know are logical in creative work. And that is, you sit down and write, regardless of what it is. Just like a lot of authors will have the same statement about, they wake up and they just write, whether it's stream of consciousness or something they remembered from a dream, they just write, even if it's babble. And that keeps that muscle, it keeps the brain workout going.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, totally.
But that is one of them, as far as interesting techniques, that one stands out to me, what you mentioned about Shannon Curtis.
Yeah, and let me read that again, for I know you and I have talked about it and probably read it ad nauseum on our own, but let me read that for listeners here. And you can find this quote and others that she so graciously gave me at unstarvingmusician.com, and just search for Shannon Curtis and you'll find her episode. She's been on one time, but she said about routines and habits that have served her best. She said, I make appointments with myself to write. I no longer wait for inspiration to strike before I sit down to write. I give myself at least 3 hours of uninterrupted time to write at a stretch. The first hour is generally me fighting with and eventually clearing away distractions my mind wants to take me to. The second and third hours are where the real productivity happens. I've learned to treat writing like a job, not like a whenever the spirit strikes sort of whim. I think that has really built my songwriting muscles so much that when I had a compressed amount of time in order to write my last album, I was able to go into my studio and write an entire record's worth of songs in about 2 weeks. But that is the one that we are referring to, and I will also place a link to that Cyndi Lauper video. So Spotify's search kind of baffles me a bit, but they have had a series, which I think is probably easier to find on YouTube, but The Best Advice I Ever Got, and it features a number of different artists answering the question, and I just happened to run across this one by Cyndi Lauper, and it kind of speaks to being satisfied with one's work and how that doesn't matter as much as just keeping the work going. And so I'm glad we talked about this again, because a little project of my own is to begin a work on a second edition of the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, and just it's a second edition to kind of update it, make it a little better, and also get me thinking about another Unstarving Musician's Guide theme. But it certainly takes just sitting down and doing, as Shannon so wisely shares with us. Tom, you and I also talked about what I think were some pretty cool email tips, because we both realize the importance for music artists, among other entrepreneurial people, of an email list. And
right.
You had a really cool tip that we started the conversation that involved something very old school and non-technical, but it was creating a special sign-up form. Can you talk a little bit about that to kind of kick this topic off?
Yeah, I remember being on tour with 3 other artists, and we were all playing on stage at the same time. So it was kind of a song swap. And we did 8 shows, and all of us on the merch table would have our own CDs, and there would be 4 sign-up sheets, because we each had our individual email sign-up sheets. At some point, somebody said, why don't we just use one sign-up sheet? And then we thought about it and thought, well, that may not be the most ethical way to do this, because say, a person wants to sign up for your sign-up sheet, but not somebody else's, which is, that's kind of a sad thing, but it is something that could happen, right? And then technically, sure, if we have one sign-up sheet, they're going to be getting what they consider spam from somebody, right? So we'd leave our 4 sign-up sheets on there, and then at the end of the night, we'd notice nobody could read really all of the email addresses or the names that people wrote down, whether it be just because they're a doctor and they're sloppy in the handwriting, or, they've had 4 beers. So we would have to take all 4 of our sign-up sheets and compare each one. If somebody signed up on all four, on one, it would show that like, oh, that's an A, that's definitely an A. And then we'd have to go to another. It's kind of like code breaking to get the correct email address and name. Right. So I don't remember where exactly I picked this up, but I do remember somebody saying, why don't we just ask people to write in block letters? And then I had the idea of, well, not only should we ask them to write in block letters, but we should print out an email sign-up sheet that has squares, kind of like certain forms that you fill out, for the IRS. For some reason, it just makes you, if you have to put one letter in one square, it just naturally causes you to write a little bit neater.
Right.
So I've printed out my sign-up sheets. They're squares, they're blocks, so that people can write in block letters. And I have probably a 75% accuracy rate, maybe more than that actually, but before definitely 50%. Just some people are writing in cursive. Excuse me. Some people are drunk and it's all over the place, and so using a block letter sign-up sheet is one of the best things I can advise people to do for shows. But you definitely need those email addresses. Social media uses algorithms in which if you're not paying for your post to promote shows, most of the people are not going to see them. And that's just the way it is. I mean, my good friend Ray, who, I'm on his Facebook and I see a lot of his posts, I'll ask him on a Friday night, hey, what are you doing tonight? What are you talking about? What am I doing? I've been posting about this show for 2 weeks. I never see it,
I haven't seen his post in a long time either, and that makes me upset because his posts are so funny.
It's all about some kind of algorithm that humans cannot understand. So email lists are the most reliable way to get out to your fans. You just have to make sure not to take advantage. Don't send too frequently. Once a month, in my opinion, is the best way to do it. So if you've got 5 shows that month, just list them all in that one email and make sure that you're targeting the right audience. For example, if my email list has grown and I've been in New England, I've been in North Carolina, I've played shows kind of in different states, and so there's no sense in me writing an email to people in North Carolina about shows that are in Texas. So if you do that too often, they'll unsubscribe.
Yeah.
So things like MailChimp allows you to, and that's a free service. There are, upgrades available, but it's a free service, but it allows you to segment your email list by state or city or zip code. So if I'm playing a show like tonight in Dripping Springs, my email is only going out to people in Central Texas. So in that sense, you could send more than one a month if you're sending it to different regions, but just be really careful about sending email to the wrong people.
Yeah, indeed. We also talked about some getting into sort of the techie tips. We talked about things like placing QR codes on those sheets or on a poster somewhere at your gig that redirects people to a sign-up form. And I had also mentioned one of the things I used to do and haven't done in a long time is just, between sets, if I was at a venue that was conducive to this, I'd go out and kind of schmooze with the crowd a bit. And if people were particularly enthusiastic about what they were hearing, particularly in my case, if they were especially interested in seeing me more, because I've been a drummer, or I am a drummer, and so I'm not up there singing songs, but a lot of times they're like, what else do you do? So those people, I would just hand them my phone ask them if they wanted to find out where I was playing next, and if yes, would they like to find out by email, and if so, just hand them my phone, and I'd have just go to the homepage of my website, and the sign-up form would be there. So a lot of cool things you can do.
Yeah, and another thing that we had mentioned before is we have to, as musicians, use as many avenues as possible in order to get paid, right? So, and as time goes on, and the industry changes a little bit because people have so many options of how they want to spend their time, and less and less people are going to shows, and that's just kind of the reality, and I'm not down on it. That's just the way the world works. So, we need to find different ways to thrive, and there are technology solutions to things like being tipped, and instead of having a tip jar, there are times when I leave my house and I don't have $1 in my pocket because I'm using credit cards for really everything. And so I can't tip you with my credit card if you're the band. But now with things like Venmo and PayPal and I don't know what the app, there's an Apple version of that. But if you put up a sign next to the tip jar that shows your Venmo account name or your PayPal email address, people can get on their phone and easily tip you where, they couldn't if they didn't have cash in their pocket, but now they can, send you a tip. And so those are great ideas. And you had mentioned QR codes for redirecting sign up sheets. And I do know that people are including QR codes for like a page that links them to their Venmo account or PayPal account. But those are all things. And these are things that I'm glad that we talked about this last week and brought it back up for this version. But these are the kind of things that I want to talk about on my podcast. Just things that I've picked up, over the short amount of time that I've been doing this. And getting paid is obviously a very important topic. It's definitely a very important topic. And, if you, and I'll give you an example, like last night I saw two great acts, right? And they both had the same band. The members of their band were the same guys. And that's because they got to pay those guys. And they paid, and I promise you, and I don't think anybody will mind, but me bringing this up, but they paid those guys more than they made at the show. And that is unfortunately the way that it works, especially in Austin and Nashville. Mm-hmm. If you want to put on a great show, you need to hire the hired guns, the guys that are going to show up prepared, and they cost money. And so, I know that if I want to play a show, I'm not going to make as much at the door as I'm going to pay the band. So I need to do everything that I can to sell my USB flash drives or CDs, which really don't sell anymore because nobody has a CD player, and make tips. And the reason you would say, well, why would you play a show that you're not going to make money at? You have to kind of pick and choose your battles in this thing. And if you are playing a show at a venue that that there will be people at that you have the opportunity to turn into fans that will later purchase your music online or see you at other venues or house shows or where you will get paid a lot of money, then it is worth it. So pick and choose your battles. Consider when you're booking shows, is this going to do anything for me, or am I going to walk out of here crying with my head down and shame, because nobody was listening because it's the wrong venue. It was a bar and restaurant, and you play mostly emotional, slow songs. Maybe that's not the right gig for you.
Right.
That's the gig for a rock band that can play in the background. But anyway, those are the kind of things I want to talk about in my podcast, and I just wanted to loop that back around. But I think it's a great thing for people to hear. So I'm glad that you reminded me of that and brought it back up.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to necessarily dive any deeper on the topic of emails, but it's probably worth mentioning that you and I had also, or you specifically had brought up that there are some text services that I think most of which are paid, but I haven't looked at them in a long time, that can be great for making email list signups kind of elegant and easier, but worth researching. And I know that I know if Tom has done so since last time we spoke, he's going to tell me right now, but I know that you and I can look at this and share some info so that I can post in the show notes for people that are kind of interested in whatever we learn about the latest on those texting services. Tom, do I remember correctly? I know I do. That people can find out everything that's going on in your world at tommeny.com, spelled TOMMENY.com.
That is correct. It's got links to my shows. It's got links to the podcast, which right now, if you click it, it'll say coming soon. But you'll at least get to see the great podcast artwork that Chris Taylor did for me. But it also has links to my Spotify, where you can just listen to me, and other media, pictures of shows and things like that. But that is the central hub for all things Tom Meny.
Awesome. And your music is fantastic, so I hope people will check that out. Tom, thank you for joining me again. Your episode, as we're talking, as we're speaking here on June 14th, 2019, is actually going to publish very soon. I'm recovering from being behind the 8 ball with my own self-imposed schedule because of my European excursion, but it's going to publish just in the next few days, so early next week, so people can hear this kind of almost sort of real time in podcast world.
Yeah, I'm glad that we were able to do this again. And let me say one more thing, because I just remembered this. You had asked me at the beginning of the call if I had any exciting things happen. I was recently, actually on Monday, I got an email from the Texas Americana Festival and Conference. And it was an email saying, hey, you can now buy tickets to come attend this. And I did a little snooping around, and I found a link on the page to submit to play it. And so I did submit, and I was accepted to play in that festival 2 days later. So that doesn't happen until February. But the reason I bring it up is because not only am I going to be playing in it, I'm going to be on a panel discussing house concerts. And for those of you in Texas that are singer-songwriters, it may not be for everyone, but if you do have a social media presence and if you have recorded material, you might want to consider applying to play in that festival. It's TEXAMFest.com is where you can find the information. I can't vouch for it, so I don't want anyone to get mad at me if they get in and it's not what they were expecting. The reason why I would suggest looking into it, especially if you're in Texas, I wouldn't maybe fly in for this thing, but it's a 3-day conference. If you do get to play the festival, you get a pass to the entire conference, which includes panels and industry meetups and things like that. So consider checking that out. And I apologize that I forgot to mention that at the beginning, but I think that's a pretty cool. Anytime there's a new, especially for me and the kind of music that I play, if there's a new festival, I want to know about it in Texas. That's for sure.
Very cool. Well, thank you for mentioning. And again, to make sure I got it right, it's TEXAM.com.
TEXAMFest.
Fest.com.
TEXAMFest.com. Yeah.
TEXAMFest.com. Let me update that. Okay, and that's going to happen in February of 2019. Thanks for sharing that, man. It'll be in the show notes for anyone who wants to see it. And Tom, as I said last time, I'll be talking to you again soon.
Yes, Roberto, thanks for having me again. I love your podcast. I hope that everybody listening to this episode hits the subscribe button on whatever podcast medium you're using. And I hope we can do this again.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for that. And you bet we'll get to do it again. Take care. I love Tom. Love his music too. Be sure to check out his Singer-Songwriter with Tom Meny podcast coming this July 2019. Such a cool guy. Hey, if you're a regular listener of the podcast, you know that I'm a fan of Bandzoogle. Let me tell you why. Bandzoogle powers websites for thousands of musicians around the world, from garage bands to Grammy winners. They have an easy-to-use system to help you get your site up fast. Lots of mobile-friendly templates to help you customize and design your site. It's built for musicians by musicians. Here are some of the features that Bandzoogle has. They have a merch and download store to sell music and merch commission-free right on your website. A tour calendar to promote your shows and sell tickets commission-free. Mailing list tools to grow your fan list and send professional-looking emails and newsletters. Integrations to pull in content from all your socials. And live support from a musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Plans start at just $8.29 a month, but you can go to bandzoogle.com to start a 30-day free trial. You can use the promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to build your artist website today. Look for links to just about everything talked about in this episode in the episode show notes at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. Thanks again so much for listening. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.